goes. Okay, praise the Lord. Um, not how everybody else is today. I'm kind of sleepy, but probably say that a lot. So that's just how it is, I guess, with having young kids. But yeah, enthusiastic to bring the word. Hopefully, that my voice can deliver with a little bit of energy and have everybody else right there with me. So last time when I was up here on Wednesday, it was a lot about what would you say, taking the bull by the horns, or causing you know causing your own story to move forward, to do more with it, to take hold of that adventure and go on with your story and make things happen, so to speak, including preaching the gospel and all sorts of other things that the Lord may bless you. But and that's good. Today is kind of the other side of that, I suppose. And sometimes we go through things. I think that's fair to say, right? Everybody gone through some things. Sometimes we go through things in our walk, and sometimes things are difficult, and sometimes we're not looking for something else to do per se, or some other direction to go, or anything like that. Sometimes we already have some hurdles, some actions happening in our life, some things that we want the Lord to do or get us out of, or whatever it is. Sometimes we already have that going on, and that's what I want to talk about today, is that aspect of things, and brought out some of these scriptures here, and actually some Nikki had shared them with me, and somebody else had shared them with her, and so I won't take full credit for bringing out those scriptures, but I think it was all in just meant to be, and in very good timing, because um, with her, she had heard these things from one of the brethren in the Lord, and heard these things mentioned, but also when she had sat down to read the scriptures a little bit, and just to open the book randomly for some answers, as we've heard in some other testimonies, she opened right to one of these stories, kind of confirmation of things that we needed to hear. Lo and behold, I'm experiencing, we're married, so we experience some of the same things together. I'm experiencing some of the things too, and lo and behold, it's time for me to bring the word, and it just all seemed very meant to be. So I want to talk about how anything can happen. Anything can happen in the Lord. Sometimes it seems like it's not going to happen, or it can't happen, or we're in an impossible situation. And there have been a few times in the Bible where it seemed like an impossible situation, that there should have been no hope, and there was no natural hope whatsoever, but the Lord delivered. And what had seemed like impossible, what had seemed like a repetitive situation that was never going to end, what had seemed like a trial with no natural hope, ended up changing almost in an instant. In many cases, is what we're going to read, and that it's not hopeless. So, for example, we won't read this particular story, but just to set the tone of what I'm talking about, give an example. We have the story of Joseph, which we all know pretty well, and had some rough things going on, which we know, and it turned out pretty well, which we know. And in Genesis 40 and 41 goes through his story. Like I said, I'm not going to read that particular one. But Joseph, um, you know, towards the end there, ended up in prison. And we're not quite sure how long he was in prison, but it looked pretty hopeless. And while he was in there, he must have been in there for a little while anyway. Um, we know that he had these visions and what they were supposed to mean, and he told the baker and what was the other guy, a butcher, somebody else, candlestick maker, or something like that. Told the other guy in there, he had dreams about them, and when they finally were getting out, that might have seemed like, okay, things are finally going to happen. I might get out of here. I had this dream. I told them what was going to happen. It's going to come true, and I'm finally going to get out of here. But 2 more years went by before he ever got out of there. And you got to think about, Joseph's thought process during those 2 years. He might have been thinking, now wait a minute, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm sitting in jail. It's not real great in here. I'm speculating it's probably not great in there. Back in those days, they probably didn't have cable TV and stuff in jail like they do now. Not that great in there. And these other 2 guys got out. The Lord gave me a vision, so something should be happening. Something should, I should be getting out of here. I should expect something to happen. I told these guys, and the baker got out with that information, and the other guy died, which he said would happen. I should be getting out any minute, but the baker forgot about it. Just, I don't know how long he spent in there with Joseph, how worried he was. Maybe he thought he was going to die. This should have been a prominent event in the baker's life that was, on the forefront of his mind and on the forefront of his memory. And even about the prophecy itself, it should have been on the forefront of his mind about, this guy said this would happen, and, here we are. But forgot about Joseph and the prophecy, or didn't tell anybody anyway, for 2 years until something else happened. And I think, we can be in similar situations is all that I'm trying to say. We can be in similar situations to where we're thinking, okay, the Lord is the answer. The Lord's going to do something, but I don't see anything happening. Am I missing something here? Am I supposed to bang and scream on the cell door? Am I supposed to put my hope and faith and trust in other things to get me out of here? Should I just keep yelling every day? Should I come up with some kind of scheme to trick the guards and try to get out of here? Obviously, the Lord's not doing anything. I mean, I thought he was, and I had hope, and the Lord gave me this vision. Why in the world did he give me this if he's not going to do anything with it? Why in the world did he bless me with that? It seemed like for nothing. What is the point? So we might have some of these thoughts sometimes. Maybe you've experienced that yourself, and you're thinking, what on earth is going on? What was the point of that, Lord? How am I going to get out of here? And so these scriptures today are to remind us a little bit about, where our hope should lie. Always, even if we don't see it happening right now, if we don't understand it happening, it's not happening in our time and all those kinds of things, the Lord is still our hope. The Lord is still the one that's going to deliver us. And, we can't go to our own. I dare say that Joseph, probably nothing else he could have really done in his own power to get out of there. But we don't read anything about him even trying or speculating. His hope was in the Lord. And so our attitude is as well. And I guess what I'm trying to avoid is the way that, there's 2 kinds of talks, getting saved and staying saved. So this staying saved sort of topic is, preventing our minds from wandering off and saying, well, I can't rely on the Lord because he's not doing something about it. I have to do something. Or this other resource that I have is going to have to do something. Or I'm going to have to look for help here or answers here and try to get out of it this way or get out of it that way. But it's the Lord who we should be relying on and hoping. and not saying to ourselves, well, the Lord doesn't work. Could be a dangerous position we can get ourselves in this thought path. The Lord doesn't work. The Lord doesn't do anything. Or if that's his plan for my life to sit in this prison, then I don't want it. I don't want the Lord's plan in my life. Is a dangerous road that we could go down on thinking those things. I don't want the Lord's plan for my life. But we see here, the Lord does have a plan, and it is good for us in the end. It is good for us eventually. So we keep those things in mind as we go on. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 30. Let's turn there as well. Unless this is working. First Samuel chapter 30. I didn't copy and paste that one because it was a little bit too much. Let's go to 1 Samuel 30. Okay. So we have here talking about David. We know his story had ups and downs, highs and lows, plan and purpose for his life that God had. I'm sure he didn't understand it sometimes. But here we have David before he became king. I think he's on the run from Saul at this stage. And things aren't looking so great. So verse 1 in chapter 30. It came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire. So that's where David was staying, in that city, which just got harsh dealings by the enemies. And he was away when this happened, but his family and everybody that he knew were there in Ziklag. Verse 2. And had taken the women captive that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. Verse 3. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. And David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. They were really sad, these guys. Verse 5. And David's two wives were taken captive. Ahinoam, what's that? Ahinoam? Yeah. The Jezreelites, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him. That's to add a little bit more salt to the wound. He comes back and finds all this, and everybody's mad at him for it. Well, he's leading the people there. Because the soul of all the people was grieved. Every Lord is God. So he still had trust and hope in God. That this all had some reason and purpose, and he knew that his answers and his way of escape from this whole situation was going to be with God. Verse 7. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar breaks it. In my Bible, it breaks up these words so long with hyphens and extra little hieroglyphic marks that it makes it even more difficult to read. I think it's supposed to make it easier, but it makes it more difficult. And brought thither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Um, I wish, it was that simple in our lives a lot of times. When we say, okay, Lord, what shall I do? And then we just hear a voice, come out of the ceiling or something that says, this is what you should do. First do this, and then do that, and then you're okay. Then we'd be pretty sure if we heard a voice, coming out of the ceiling or the sky or the shower head or something, we would know definitely we're going to listen to that. We're going to follow those instructions. But sometimes for us in our walk, it seems a little bit more ambiguous, right? The Lord's not leaving us a note on the kitchen table. The Lord is directing us through His Word here and through our praying and opening up to Him and asking Him those things, but then looking to the Word for the answer and the guidance. Looking at these stories that line up, much like Nikki's prayer going out to the Lord, and like I said, she opened up the Bible and landed on one of these things, and it was the same thing that someone mentioned to her previously. And so the Lord speaks to us in those ways. If we choose to listen, if we are earnestly and wanting to seek an answer and to be fed of the Word of God, we can sort of hear His voice in a way and be led in that way. Where was I? Verse 9. So, got the instructions. David went. He and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode him, which were so faint that they could not go over Besor. So some of the guys were too weak. Part of the army stayed behind because they couldn't go on. Verse 11. And they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water, and they gave him pieces of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. So they found this guy. He's going to give them some information, some intel about where to go and what to do. But they found this guy, this Egyptian wandering. They fed him. They kind of got him to a point where he could talk again. And there he is now in David's camp with David's army. They're trying to figure out where to go to pursue the enemy. And this guy's going to give him some information. In verse 13, and David said unto him, to whom belongest thou? And whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me because 3 days agone I fell sick. We made an investigation upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. So he's actually part of the enemy here. And David said to him, canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, swear unto me by God that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. Okay, so we found the enemy. And David smote them from the twilight even into the evening of the next day. And there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men which rode upon camels and fled. And David recovered all the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives, and there was nothing lacking to them neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil, nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle and said, "This is David's spoil." So they ended up with even more than what they were missing to begin with, because they got all the other guys' stuff, all the bad guys' stuff. Verse 21, and David came to 200 men, which were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide at the brook Besor, and they went forth to meet David and to meet the people that were with him. And when David came near to the people, he saluted them. Then answered all the wicked men and men of Belial, of those that went with David, and said, because they were not with us, we will not give them out of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart. So they came back to the part of the army that had to stay behind because they were too weak to go on, and David wants to share the spoils with them as well. So what a good guy David is. So these guys didn't even help out, said they were too weak, but everybody's gonna get an equal share. We're gonna give the spoils to them as well. And I think that's it's coming from a place in David's heart or in his mind where he's thinking, I don't need to hoard things to myself. I don't need to try to take hold of things for my own provisions or my own gain, because the Lord is my provider, and I'm leading these people. He can freely give everything he's got to everybody else, because the Lord is his provider, and he's aware of that. So no problem. We'll give everybody equal share of everything. Verse 24, for who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as this part is that goeth down into battle, so shall this part be that tarrieth by the stuff. Shall part like. Seems like he ran out of words there. He was being all eloquent in Old English with his words that we're reading, but these people that stayed here by the stuff, these people that hung out by the stuff, they're going to have some of the stuff as well. Verse 25, and it was from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day. And when David came unto Ziklag, he sent of the spoil unto the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. To them which were in Bethel, and to them which were in South Ramoth, and to them which were in Jatir, and to them which were in Arior, and to them which are yada yada yada. And it goes on. So just after this, next chapter, in fact, King Saul dies, and shortly after, David becomes king. And so we go from, if you look at it from where David was in the darkness there, into what became of him afterwards, there's a huge contrast. And he could have no way of known that day when he came back to his camp and saw everything burned with fire, and the women and children all taken captive, and their things all gone. He had no way of knowing that from that position, only a few days later, he was actually going to be king. So he goes from people wanting to kill him, everybody that he was leading wanting to stone him to death. He has nothing. He's lost his family. He's lost everything. To a few days later, he's got everything back. Everybody likes him again, and he's the king. So there's a contrast similar to what happened with Joseph being in jail. From a time when Joseph was sitting in jail with no real natural hope of escape, no real natural expectation of how things should improve, goes from there to being the second most powerful man in the land. And it happened just like that. I mean, yeah, he went through the thing for 2 years, but when it happened, it was quick. And you would think, think of in natural terms, going back to Joseph's example, how long would it take? Let's say there was a way for you to break out of prison. How long do you think it would take, natural terms, working like crazy to go from someone who just broke out of prison and has nothing to being the second most powerful man in Egypt? It's probably not even possible, but I think it would take a lot. I mean, what would you do? I mean, come out and start to form partnerships with people, and what would you even offer? I mean, would you have to go out and start growing some tomatoes or something, and then start trading, and then start working your way up the Egyptian corporate ladder or something, and then until you finally got there? I mean, even then he was a convict. He was supposed to be in jail. I mean, just no hope. But when God wants it to happen, when God has a plan for our life, it's just like that. It just happens. Goes from his state where he was in jail, in prison, to second most powerful man in Egypt. And so a similar thing with David, going from you have nothing, everybody wants to kill you, to you're the king of everything. So there you have it, just like that. And the Lord did it. The Lord has a plan for us, a map for us, and He's going to deliver. Our hope is in Him. Let's go for another story. I think last time I was here, I told the importance of stories too. So here's some stories to illustrate the point. Let's go to 2 Kings chapter 6. We have in this story a great famine that is in the land of Samaria. When I first read through this, I was a little confused because it's like they're in Samaria, but they're not in Samaria. But there's a city, and then there's a camp of the bad guys, and then there's the city of the good guys. Anyway, it's all happening in Samaria. I'll just start in verse 25. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Now, I don't know what all that really means, except to say that selling, it sounds like expensive bird poo. And so I guess the economy is bad, is what they're trying to say. It's going to cost you a lot of money even just to buy some bird poo. And so, and I imagine the head of this animal here is probably not something you really want to desire to have either, but that's expensive as well. So it's got a bad economy here. People are poor, people are hungry, they're starving really bad. Can't buy anything. Everything's too expensive. Verse 26, and the king of Israel was passing upon the wall, and there cried a woman unto him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress? And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? What is your problem, woman? And she answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son, and we did eat him. And I said unto her the next day, Give thy son, that we may eat him. And she hid her son. That doesn't seem fair. But that's how bad things were at this time. This is this kind of stuff that was going on. They couldn't buy food. They couldn't find food. And so we have resorted to this, which doesn't seem good. And these were the arguments being brought before the king. In verse 30, and when it came to pass, the king heard the word of the woman, and he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked and beheld he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. It didn't sound like he didn't even want to answer this. He didn't even like, oh, you know what? It's fair. You ate him yesterday, so it's only fair that you eat him today. He was like sick to his stomach that this was even going on in his kingdom, where he was supposed to lead and provide for his people and take care of them. This is what it resorted to. He couldn't even answer them, and he did the the thing that they do when they're mourning back then, sackcloth and ashes and all that. And he was mourning, and he was grieved that this was the state the city was in. The economy was so bad that this is what it was like. And maybe he felt some responsibility for that as well. Then let's go to chapter 7. We have the prophet coming in to give a little prophecy about what's going to happen. And then Elijah said, "Hear ye the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel in the gate of Samaria." So where they live, this was going to be the case. The economy was going to get so good that all this stuff that they want, the flour and the barley and stuff, that they can't even get their hands on it all right now. By this time tomorrow, it's going to be a great economy, and all this stuff's going to be so plentiful that anybody can buy it and anyone can have it. We could all go back to eating flatbread and whatever else we were making before, and everyone will be in good shape by this time tomorrow. Verse 2. Then a Lord who's on the whose hand the king leaned answered the man of God and said, "Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be?" And he said, "Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof." So the guy that was like the king's right hand man was questioning whether these things were really true, whether the word of God was true. He didn't see it. How could it be possible? It was there was no hope of that he could look around and see. How could that ever be? There's no food anywhere. There's no chance of this end to happen tomorrow by this time, and for everything to change that quickly, and for us to go from where we are now to that. How can that be? That doesn't sound real. And so he said, "Well, since you don't believe, then you are going to be able to see this happen, but you're not going to partake of it because of your disbelief." So I just want to draw out that we don't want to be in that position where the Lord's promised us things, and we want to make sure that we believe it, that we believe that the Lord is our hope, our salvation. The Lord has a plan for us. The Lord is going to solve the problems, and we need to trust in that and be glad in those things, and not in despair about where we currently sit because we don't see the end. Meanwhile, we're cutting scenes now. We're shifting to a different scene. But in verse 3, and there were 4 leprous men at the entering of the gate, and they said to one another, "Why sit here until we die?" So they're getting desperate as well, much like everybody else. And verse 4, if we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. So they can't go to the city where we just read about. They go back in there. There's a famine, and they're going to be dead there anyway. And if we sit here still, we die also. Now therefore come, and let us fall into the host of the Syrians. So the bad guys in a camp. Let's go there. Let's just walk right into the bad guys' camp. What have we got to lose? We don't have any food here. There's no food in the city. If they kill us, then they kill us, I think is what they said. If we say we will We will enter into the city, and the famine is in the city. We shall die there, and if we sit here, we shall die also. Now therefore come, let us fall into the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live. If they kill us, we shall but die. I mean, we're going to die anyway. So let's just go. That's where our best chances are. And they rose up in the twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. So there was nobody in the camp of the bad guys where they went. There's nobody there. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said to one another, Lo, the king of Israel had hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life. So the Lord made this happen, obviously. He caused these guys to hear something as if they were going to be attacked by the enemy, and they fled, and they just dropped everything. They left their animals there, they left their food there, they left their treasures there, they left everything and just ran for their lives because they thought they were going to get taken over by people that were approaching. But they were just hearing things, really. The Lord caused them to hear this. It wasn't really happening. So praise the Lord. In verse 8, and when these lepers came to the othermost part of the camp, they went into one tent, and they did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and gold and raiment, and went and hid it. And they came again and entered into another tent, and they carried it thence also, and went and hid it. So they were stocking up now. We're like, oh, okay, we're going to start hoarding some of this stuff for ourselves and go hide it away. And they said to one another, we do not well. This is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household. So they started feeling a little bit bad about keeping all this to themselves. So let's go and tell the king. Let's go and tell the king that, because they know that the king needs food and everything for his people too. We need to go tell the king and let them know what's going on here. So next scene, bringing the good news. Those two folks with the leprosy that just had that good fortune came back to tell the king. Verse 10. So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither a voice of man, but the horses tied and the asses tied in the tents as they were. And he called to the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose in the night and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. So the king is very suspicious about what's going on here. He's saying, I know what's going on here. This is a trap. They know that we be hungry. See, that's what happens when you fall on bad times and the economy gets bad. You start talking like that. You say, we be hungry. They know that we be hungry. Therefore, they are all gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, when they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive and get into the city. They're saying this was a trap. They're just there. They left their tents and everything, and they're out hiding in the wilderness. And when we come to come and take their stuff, they're going to jump out of the woodwork and ambush us. And they're going to be able to get into our city, and it's all going to be over. It's a trap. And one of the servants answered and said, let some take, I pray, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are as all the multitude of Israel are left in it. Behold, I say, there are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us see. So they only had a couple of animals left, a couple of horses left. Just take what we have left, put a couple of guys on these horses, and they can go and check it out. Verse 14, they took therefore 2 chariot horses. And the king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, "Go and see." And they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, um, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out, um, from the city over to the abandoned tents of the Syrians, and spoiled the tents of the Syrians. So a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. So the guy before that was his right hand man that was casting doubt over the prophecy. Told him to go and you take charge over the gate of the city. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. And the man of God had said, who spake when the king came down to him. So that guy, that part of the prophecy came true as well. He saw it happen. He saw the prophecy come true, but he didn't get to eat of it. He didn't get to partake in what was going on. And so we have a similar story here. Desperate. No hope. No natural chance of anything happening. Nothing to do in your own abilities, really. And I don't even know how long that went for, but they were probably hungry for a while, considering what they were doing there and how they were behaving. Hopeless, and probably for a long time. But in an instant, like the prophecy said, by this time tomorrow, it's all going to change. And the same could happen with us. By this time tomorrow, if you're going through something, it could all change. It might not. You might think it might, and it might be another 2 years, like happened with Joseph. But it's according to the Lord's will and his purpose and his story and his journey that he has for you. And we have to have trust in that journey, and trust in what the Lord's plan is for us, and trust in that he is our hope. Because we don't want to get to the point, as I started off this thing saying, we don't want to get to the point in saying, well, I don't like the Lord's plan for me. If this is the Lord's plan for me to sit in this prison, if this is the Lord's plan for us to be in this city and hungry for who knows how long or forever, because I don't see things changing. If this is my lot in life, if we, what was the other one? David, I come back and I have nothing and no family or anything, and the enemy has plundered us, and he didn't know a couple days from then he was going to be made king or anything like that. We might have situations that are similar, and we don't want to say, I don't like that plan. I'm going to, curse the Lord and walk away. Whereas in Job's case, in the story of Job, where his wife said, why don't you curse the Lord and die already? It's not going to get any better. Just give up hope. Job, look what's happened to you. We lost all of our family. You lost all of your property. You lost all of this. Your friends aren't being any help to you, but you're still holding on to the hope of God. Why? Why bother doing that? And as we saw in this story, it's because he's got a plan. He knows the beginning from the end. He knows the answer to all of these things that he's going to provide for us. It's not going to come from us and what we figured out naturally. It's going to come from him, and our hope remains in him. Our hope is in God. Let's just finish up in 1 Peter 3. Just a quick verse there. I'm reminded of when Jesus was with his disciples and was giving them some advice, and one said that, where else are we going to go, Lord? Where else are we going to go? What are we going to do? The hope is not in anything else. Salvation is not in anything else. But our hope is in the Lord. So 1 Peter 3, verse 15. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ye ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear. And so even in these times, think about Joseph sitting in prison, not knowing when or if he was ever going to be able to get out, still preaching the gospel, so to speak, or what he had for a gospel then. He knew that he trusted in the Lord. He was still talking about his visions. He was still talking about God. He was still talking about the Lord's plan for his life. And we have a duty to do the same thing too. That even when we're going through those things, that we're ready to give an answer. When somebody comes and says, "So you're a Christian, right? And you've been in this position, and you've been in this position for a long time now. Well, what are you doing then?" And we're ready to give that answer, that our hope is in God. Our hope is not in our natural ability to get out, but God has a plan for my life. And I'm trusting in that plan. And I'm relying on that plan. And I'm rejoicing that he even has a plan for me. And I'm rejoicing that I know the answer will come from God. I'm resting and rejoicing in all of those things. And I'll leave it there. And we'll move into communion service now. If you hand that out. Awesome. Thanks.